Today, we're diving into the life and legacy of FBG Brick, also known as Number 30. This figure emerged from the notorious 63rd and St. Lawrence area, a section of Chicago well known for its deep street connections. A member of the EBT, East Side Block, he was also well acquainted with Taekwon World, and although gangster disciples were prevalent in his area, there was no shortage of rival factions either. Brick had connections that crossed multiple boundaries, which were further complicated by his close ties to high-profile figures within Chicago's drill scene. Brick was the older brother of FBG Duck, the cousin of THF, Tay-Town, and the cousin of MOB Scrap, reinforcing his deep roots in the city's street culture. FBG Brick's family ties within the drill scene were notable, particularly with his brother FBG Duck, MOB Scrap. The dynamics within Chicago's street politics were murky, with shifting alliances and loyalties. After the tragic death of his cousin, Brick's reaction revealed a lot about the complexity of these relationships. Notably, despite the tensions, Brick openly claimed allegiance to THF in a tweet, which showed the fluid nature of affiliations in this world. These political shifts contribute to the overall chaos in Chicago's street life, particularly on the South Side, where factions like BDs and GDs, as well as alliances like PDK and GDK, were often at odds. The violence between these groups created an environment where allegiances were as temporary as they were dangerous. FBG Brick was a highly respected figure in his community. His reputation among locals from St. Lawrence to the wider neighborhoods was profound. He was especially close with TB, another figure from the drill scene. The two often appeared together in videos, and their bond appeared almost brotherly. In fact, Brick's music career was starting to gain traction before his untimely death. One particular video, Jumpman, highlighted his talent, showing the energy and charisma that made him stand out in the music world. Before his passing, Brick was reportedly in the process of distancing himself from street life, planning to move to Las Vegas and focus solely on music. The plans were interrupted when Brick was killed, showing how hard it is for individuals entrenched in this lifestyle to break free from its grip. FBG Brick's death wasn't just another name on a long list of casualties. It was a pivotal moment in a larger, unrelenting cycle of violence that continued to haunt the streets of Chicago. The tragic pattern had been developing for years, and 2017 was the year when the bloodshed reached a boiling point. The South Side, already notorious for its gang wars and deep-rooted street politics, became the setting for an even more chaotic and dangerous battle. Brick, along with others like TB and Poppy, became symbols of a generation lost to this never-ending cycle of violence, and their deaths only fueled the fire of revenge that had consumed the streets for decades. As the bodies continued to drop, the rivalries that defined Chicago's gang culture became more intense. For every action, there was a swift retaliation, and for every retaliation, another death followed. The feeling of being constantly on edge, waiting for the next move, was suffocating. In a world where loyalty to your crew and your hood meant everything, leaving that life behind wasn't just hard, it was almost impossible. Even those who tried to escape or pursue something better were often dragged back into the web of violence, like FBG Brick, who had dreams of moving to Las Vegas and dedicating himself to his music career. But no matter how hard they tried to break free, the streets had a way of pulling them back in. Whether it was family ties, personal rivalries, or the constant pressure from the very people who once called you brother, it became clear that escape was a myth in this world. Brick's death wasn't just personal. It was a brutal reminder of how the violence and politics of the street could reach into every corner of your life. His death set off a chain reaction that would once again spiral into endless retaliation, leaving a trail of loss and heartbreak in its wake. Once Brick was gone, the violence didn't slow, it escalated. The back and forth between factions like the BDs, GDs, THF, and others was fueled by revenge, and every new death only made the cycle worse. Each side felt justified in their actions, seeing the killing of their loved ones as a reason to strike harder and faster. In the world of street politics, there was no room for peace, only for dominance, respect, and survival. But the cost of survival in this environment was steep, and it was paid in blood. The streets didn't mourn their losses. They simply counted the bodies and plotted the next move. With each killing, new players entered the game, some desperate for revenge, others hungry for power, but all of them caught in the same cycle that had claimed so many lives before them. This was the reality of the war. No one was safe. Those on the front lines were marked for death the moment they stepped outside. Friends turned into enemies, and loyalty was measured by how far you were willing to go to protect your crew. The boundaries between allies and enemies became blurred as loyalties shifted in the blink of an eye. In a world so steeped in violence, there was no such thing as neutrality. If you weren't with them, you were against them, and that meant you were a target. For those like FBG Brick, who tried to break away from the madness, the dream of escape was just that, a dream. Brick had started to carve a path out of the chaos by focusing on his music, his only shot at a future beyond the violence. His music was an outlet, a way to express the pain, the struggles, and the triumphs of his life. But as his career gained momentum, the shadows of his past grew longer, and the streets were never far behind. The fact that Brick was trying to move to Las Vegas was more than just an aspiration. It was an attempt to rewrite his story. He wanted to leave the violence, the paranoia, and the bloodshed behind. He wanted to make it in the music world, to be more than just another statistic in a city overwhelmed by street politics. But it wasn't just about escaping to a new city. It was about escaping the toxic culture that had wrapped its claws around him from a young age. He had the talent, the drive, and the opportunity, but the weight of his connections, his past, and the threats from rival factions kept him tethered to the very streets he was trying to escape. Brick's story wasn't unique. Many others in the drill scene shared similar dreams, but they all fell victim to the same unrelenting forces. People like Chief Keef, Lil Durk, and Lil Bibby all came from the same neighborhoods, and while they managed to find success, they too had to navigate the constant threat of violence that came with their fame. Even those who had made it out of the streets were never truly free. The truth is that for many young men like Brick, the streets are an inescapable prison. The bonds formed in these environments are unbreakable, and once you're caught in the cycle, there's no getting out. Escape is an illusion, a dream that's constantly dashed by the harsh realities of the world around you. As the bodies continued to pile up, the culture of retaliation only became stronger. Loyalty, once the cornerstone of street life, became a matter of life and death. Each death was paid for with another, and each act of revenge further entrenched the divide between rival factions. It wasn't just about killing. It was about sending a message, about making sure the other side understood that they were next. In the world of gang warfare, revenge wasn't just a motive. It was the law. The code of the streets demanded it. And to break it meant facing the wrath of those who held loyalty above all else. And so the war raged on, unchecked, relentless, and brutal. The cycle was endless, a revolving door of violence, grief, and retaliation. Each side fought to maintain dominance, to hold on to a piece of territory, to avenge their fallen comrades. But as each battle was fought, it became clearer that no one would ever truly win. The streets didn't offer victories, only casualties. And as long as the cycle continued, there would be no peace. FBG Brick's death was just one chapter in a never-ending story. His blood, like so many before him, fueled the fire that burned through the streets of Chicago. And as long as the cycle of violence persisted, no one, no matter how talented, how ambitious, or how determined, could truly escape. The war continued, and the bodies kept piling up.